more than half a century, Palestinians and Israelis have been locked in a deadly struggle over conflicting claims in what many call the Holy Land. The violence of each side against the other breaks out again and again. Unless there is real progress toward a settlement, there will almost surely be more Palestinian suicide bombings, more rocket attacks, more Israeli retaliatory strikes. The military occupation and resistance to it will continue. Painful suffering on both sides. What can the United States do to make sure that this conflict is ended in a fair and reasonable peace? That is one of the highest priority issues on the Obama administration's foreign policy agenda. I'm Landrum Bolling, a one-time foreign correspondent, later professor, college president, currently advisor for non-governmental programs of humanitarian assistance and reconciliation in the Middle East. In that role and on other assignments in the region, I came to know a remarkable group of Israeli, Palestinian, and American leaders, all deeply concerned about how to end the violence. Among them are four of our most knowledgeable senior American statesmen. They are President Jimmy Carter, former Secretary of State James Baker, and two veteran foreign policy experts, General Brent Scowcroft and Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, both of whom served as national security advisors in the White House. All four see an emerging new hope for peace in the Middle East if bold and determined actions are now taken by the United States. Faced with all of the terrible things that have happened between the Palestinians and Israelis that continue to happen, the war in Gaza, the continuing of the occupation, and with the growing sense of bitterness and frustration, many people are saying that peace is not really possible. Are you still hopeful that a peace can be made?
Well, I am. I never have lost faith in the possibility or probability or inevitability of peace. And the reason I say that is because the overwhelming majority of Israelis and Palestinians, whether they're Fatah or Hamas, the overwhelming portion of the Syrians and the Lebanese and Jordanians, they all want peace. And if you run public opinion polls, they've been consistent for the last 30 years or so. Absolutely. 60% or more of the people want peace. Sometimes they go up to 80%.
The vast majority of the Israeli body politic are tired of being a nation perpetually at war. They want to see a peace agreement. They want to see a secure peace agreement. And so do the Palestinian people. There are some elements of the Palestinian polity who sound an awful lot like they don't want to see peace. But the vast majority of the Palestinian people, I think, do want peace, and I know the vast majority of the Israeli people do. A comprehensive peace and a sustained and lasting peace.
There's no question about the extent of the bitterness, but I think paradoxically that gives us an opportunity. But I think we have to change our way of doing things. And no longer can we sit down and say, we'll provide the table and we hope you, the Palestinians, and you, the Israelis, can come to a deal. We've got to play a more active role.
I basically agree with Brent. Frustration is widespread, and ultimately neither side is really prepared to make the necessary concessions. It takes a constructive, impartial, energetic, outside mediator to push the process forward. And there's only one candidate who can fill these qualifications, and that is the United States, and more specifically, the President of the United States.
Make no mistake about it, the United States is the indispensable party in terms of getting a peace deal negotiated between Arabs and Israelis because of our relationship with Israel. No American administration will ever abandon Israel.
There's no point assigning blame and saying this one is more responsible than the other one. It's a tragic situation. Two decent peoples are locked in a mortal embrace, and they cannot move towards peace unless someone really helps them.
How do you deal with the question of what people you talk to.
You have to talk to people. You have to talk to people. You talk to your enemies like we did when we encouraged them to attend the Madrid conference and break the old taboo that Arabs and Israelis, or that Palestinians and Israelis and other Arabs and Israelis wouldn't talk to each other.
We were talking about Hamas, and I gather you think that we should find a way to talk to Hamas.
First of all, I think we ought to offer to talk to Hamas. I see nothing to be gained by ostracizing them. There's more than one Hamas. It is not a monolithic force.
Absolutely.
And the Hamas group inside Gaza has different perspective from the Hamas group, the two Hamas groups in Damascus. And in addition, I think if the peace process got moving, Hamas won't want to be left out of it. It will give them a tremendous incentive to come back in and participate.
Find a way, find a construct where Hamas where the views and commitments of Hamas can be obtained. And again, I get back to what I said earlier. We were faced with this same situation in 1991 with the PLO. We couldn't talk to PLO. Israel wouldn't talk to PLO. But we found a construct that worked. And the same thing can be done today. But you can't make peace with people if you're not willing to talk to them.
We have to recognize also the fact that there's also tremendous diversity on the Israeli side.
Sure.
We have to talk to everyone if we want to move towards peace.
How do you see the reasons that explain why there's been so much difficulty in getting an agreement?
I think it's because the leaders of Israel, for various reasons, political and deep religious beliefs and political beliefs, for the last 30 years have resolved that they're not going to withdraw from the occupied territories, from the West Bank. Even when I was still in office, there was some move in this direction. As you may know, after the Camp David Accords, after the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, under Prime Minister Begin, they continued to build a few settlements, and then, of course, that has escalated over a period of time. I think the most settlements in history were made during the time of President Clinton, and when Prime Minister Barack was in office. There was almost an unrestrained increase in the number of settlements in. But I think the desire of leaders in Israel to occupy and colonize the land in the West Bank, that's been the key problem.
The hardliners on both sides are the biggest obstacles to achieving peace between Arabs and Israelis. And those hardliners are Arabs who will not acknowledge Israel's right to exist, and Israelis who want to keep the occupied territories. And you just have to reconcile yourself, and the vast majority of Palestinians and Israelis, or Arabs and Israelis, to the idea that the absolutists on each side have got to be overcome.
I think public opinion there has been fairly consistent when you give it to them in generic question. Would you be willing to exchange land for peace?
They say yes.
The answer is yes. We would be willing to give up the West Bank in order to have permanent peace. Of course, what the political leaders know very shrewdly is the more they can issue the premise or the belief that peace is not possible, security for Israel is not possible, then they say, well, we don't want to give up the land then. Sure. So I think that's been the repetitive problem. And of course, there have been some irresponsible decisions made by Palestinians as well. Sure. You know, with the suicide bombers and the attacks that have wreaked havoc and fear among completely innocent civilians, children and women. That's been an unforgivable act that has greatly exacerbated the already serious problem.